Hey everybody. Sorry it's been a little while there, but I had my enrollment that I had to go to that I was telling you about, that I'm an insurance agent. That was pretty much a 6-day process on that one. And then when I got home, I was a little tired. So I decided to take a few extra days just to kind of relax. So we got this one. Probably this video will be split into two parts just because it's two totally separate topics. But the first topic that we'll get into here, like I promised you from the last time, we'll talk a little bit about insurance. I know, great subject, right? Everybody wants to talk about insurance. Then the second part, we'll get into my more salacious stuff, that Trump stuff, It seems that he's quite a bit of my anxiety, so I guess I gotta let it out somehow, right? So let's talk about insurance. First things first, this is only my opinion. It's not official advice. Don't take it as such. Always consult your local insurance professional. Yes, I know I am an insurance professional, but you're not consulting me. I'm just kind of getting stuff off my chest here. So one of the things that I do is I talk to employees at their work site about all of their benefits. So everything from medical to life insurance. I myself am an independent contractor. I go with a company that handles all of the what we call voluntary benefits. So all the stuff like, short-term disability, life insurance, accident policies, critical illness, all that kind of stuff. Well, a lot of people come in and they're like, well, what do I need? What do I need? Well, my first thing I always tell everybody is what you need depends on what life stage you're in. Everybody has different needs. Would I love to sell you everything? Sure, of course. I get paid commission, so why not, right? But at the same time, if the insurance agent is an ethical agent, they should be looking at what you actually need versus what they want you to have. And with that being said, like I say, it's life stages. Everybody has them. You start out as a young adult. Generally, you're usually single. You usually don't have a significant other that you have to be responsible for. Don't have children. You just don't have a mortgage. So your needs are going to be vastly different than that single person that turns into a person that has, a significant other or has kids or both. And then the next life stage after that would be that you have a mortgage. Because there are certain things that you have to protect when we're talking about mortgages. And that's including in, medical and all the other voluntary benefits. And then as you start getting older, you're starting to pay off stuff. So your mortgage, a lot less mortgage. You might have a nice nest egg set aside, and you might have, other investments that you can fall back on. So there's different things that you'll need during those life stages. And then finally, when we get into more of the elderly stage, everything's pretty much paid off. All you really need at that point is just to make sure that your medical coverage is covered, and then you're also looking at a small life insurance policy, so that way you can make sure that you get buried the way you want to get buried, and things like that. So let's start with that young person that's just starting out in life, that they might not have all the different things that they need, so to speak. So I always recommend medical insurance for everybody, even if you don't ever go to the doctor. Because here's the trick with medical. You don't know when you're going to have an emergency. You don't know that time that your appendix is going to burst, and then you have to go in the hospital. There's all sorts of different things out there that's a unknown. And I get lots of young people that are like, well, I've never had any problems, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, I've got a gentleman that is staying with us. He's my daughter's future husband, and he just learned the surprise of what medical can happen to you. He just went and had a problem where he was really sick for over a week. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Got to the point where it's like, well, I think I need to go into, the emergency room because I'm not doing great. And so he did. So he made his trip to his emergency room. Doctors gave him a bunch of medicines to take, took a bunch of x-rays, and all of a sudden, a couple weeks down the road, he now has himself a nice doctor's bill for the emergency room for over $3,000. Now he's 28 years old. You can do out the math and say, well, he would have paid more in premiums than he did for that doctor's bill, so he's ahead of the game. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he won that round, but it could have been worse. Could have had to have a hospital stay. So then we talk about hospital stays. Just to get into the door of a hospital and get a room, that's $10,000. And then, each day beyond that, that's another $10,000. So, that's why we say that, yeah, you might not need it, but it's probably a good idea to have it for that just in case. Because it's better to pay that little bit out of your pocket now than having to pay that large bill later. Because he was looking at that $3,000 bill and he's like, well, I don't have $3,000 in my checking account. I don't have, anything that I can sell that's going to be worth $3,000. So now he's having to finance it and he's paying more interest on it. And so that's where, again, you kind of get into that situation where get it now. Usually most employers are very inexpensive. The ones that aren't, go to the private market. Every state has their own private market. On top of that, more than likely, you being a young person, fairly good chance that you're not making a high wage. So, shop the state insurance. See if the state will cover you. That's what it's there for. I know people have a stigma about it, but you know what? That's what it's there for you to be able to be covered for just in case. And they're taking up the most, if not all, of the tab. So it does depend on state and what they do cover. The next is going to be dental. Dental's another one of those that people say, oh, I don't need it. Myself included, I don't particularly like the dentist. I don't like going to them. But you know what? I have dental insurance. That's kind of one of those for all ages. Really should have dental insurance. If your employer doesn't offer it, most do, but some don't. There are, outside parties that you can go to, but you just have to be careful with those outside parties because the type of dental insurance does vary. The main type that everybody knows is that you go to a dentist, you have a cap every year that you can spend toward your dentist. And then depending on what you do for services does depend on exactly what you pay up to that cap. There's another type of dental insurance out there that basically all they're doing is they're giving you a discount. So you're paying for the dental insurance and then they may give you 10% off this, 15% off that. Then a third type, which is basically like that one there, is you're paying a specific amount for each service. So you might pay $75 for a filling. You might pay $800 for a crown, that kind of stuff. That, is different than the first type of insurance because the first type is really where you're getting your best value for dental insurance. And the third type, you're getting a flat price, but you're also probably going to be paying a lot more in the premiums than if you'd gotten one from your employer. And then vision, that's another one. People like me who, have glasses or contacts, we need that vision. And it's not the greatest thing in the world. You can go online sometimes and get a better deal. Some of the online people will also take the the vision insurance. But that's the reason why usually when we're talking employee benefits, your vision insurance is either included or it's very cheap. Usually like a couple bucks each paycheck. Because it's not giving you a great discount, but it does give you something. And then, let's talk about the next life stage. So you've got a significant other. The first one, life insurance. That's kind of one of those other big questions that a young person says, well, why do I need life insurance? Well, think about this. You pass away, and who's going to be responsible for your funeral? Who's going to be that person that's going to pay for that coffin or pay for that cremation? A really basic bare bones cremation, all they're doing is basically they're cremating you, putting you in a plastic bag and handing it to the person in a box and saying, here you go. That's $1,600. And, a very bare bones funeral. So all they're doing is putting you in a real simple basic coffin, delivering you to the service, and then, putting you in the ground. That's $10,000. That's not including, what the church might charge you for the services, for the graveside services, all that kind of stuff. So those are things that you have to think about. And yes, I have people that say, well, I'm going to be dead, so I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, that is very much true. You will be. But, myself, I would hate to think that my family would have to pay for my funeral because they're already grieving. And all of a sudden you got this big bill. And that happened with me, my sister, love her to death. We had problems, but she passed away due to COVID, like I had mentioned before. And there was a $1,600 bill because she did a real basic cremation because her husband couldn't afford anything more. And so, I stepped up and I paid it for her because really he couldn't even afford that. And I didn't want to have to burden him with that obligation at that time because, again, he's hurting. Why make it to where now he's got to pay for that cost of that funeral? So, young people, just get a basic policy, $10,000. You being young through your employer, probably going to cost you 50 cents to $1 per paycheck. I mean, it's really cheap. And then so now we get in the next life stage. So we get to people that have, kids, that's the other, got mortgage. That's when you have to kind of protect yourself more. Medical's given, of course. The dental, vision, that's all given. Then we get into like short-term disability, those kind of things. So short-term disability, a lot of states are now picking that up. They're now making their own short-term disability. But there are some states that don't. There's also exemptions to that too. So I work a lot with tribes, and the tribes are usually tax exempt. They have their own short-term disability policy separate from the states. So that's when we start talking about this is a way to be able to help protect your paycheck until you come back to work. Now you talk to financial advisors out there and they're going to tell you that you should have approximately 6 months worth of salary saved up. So that way you can basically protect yourself until you come back to work. Now, I don't know about you and me or anybody else, but 6 months is a lot of salary, especially when you're in the younger stage of your life. So start with 3, build that, make that a goal, and make that where you're going to start at that 3 months of salary, get that saved up, and then, move your goal to 6 months. And that way you have that protection. When you do that, you don't need to buy the short-term disability. You have your protection built in. You just got to make sure that, you have that earmarked specifically for, hey, this is for my time off work, not this is my time off work / vacation / that really cool motorcycle that I want to buy fund. It's got to be the one thing only, put it in there. And then, like I say, that way you don't have to worry about short-term disability. Now, the other big one is going to be life insurance. So life insurance, when you get into that stage, you need to make sure that you have enough not only to bury you, but also to have it set aside for things like final medical expenses. Because again, you've got somebody that's counting on you, so you want to make sure that it's set aside for that. You also need enough in there to pay off mortgages. And as far as the significant other, you know, we want to set aside enough to make it comfortable for them. We know that probably in a year or 2 years, they're more than likely going to move on. But we don't want them struggling during that time. So you should have enough that basically covers your salary for the next year to 2 years. So if you're making $50,000 a year, and that'd be $100,000. If you've got a $300,000 mortgage, then you're looking at $400,000. And if you have kids, probably be a good idea to throw in $20,000 or $30,000 extra for at least a start on the kids' college fund. That's the kind of mentality where you think about that. Now, always keep in mind too that in life insurance, there is a limit to it. We try to make sure that people aren't taking out huge amounts of policies like you see on those murder channels. So basically we say 5 times the salary. So a good example is if you are $50,000 earner, then you're looking at a $250,000 max policy. So that's where you kind of look at that part there. And then as we start getting older, you pay off your mortgage, then you take down those policies. So if you only have $50,000 left on your mortgage, why have a $300,000 life insurance policy? Bring it down. Now, as far as life insurance goes, there are lots of different types of life insurance, but the couple basic types is going to be a term life, and then you also have a what they call whole life policy. Term life is just how it sounds. It goes for a specific amount of time. So 10 years, 15, 20, 30, whatever it might be. And then once that term ends, your policy basically ends. And now those are what we call non-cash value policies. So all those premiums that you paid into them are then gone. Now a lot of individuals, they look at that and they ask themselves, well, why would I want something like that? Well, they're cheap. Again, there are dollars for having a large policy. And then that way specifically, because we understand that there is no value to them. And then we look at whole life policies, which those are a cash value. So when you put your premiums into that, everything you pay towards it, they're taking that and they're investing 4% or 3% or whatever it might be for their market value, and then they give you that back in cash. Well, they don't really give it back to you, they put it in an account. You can then take that account at any point and you can borrow against it, which I don't recommend, because borrowing against an account like that, you got a lot of interest. They charge a lot of interest. And then the other thing that they have for you is they, you can say, hey, I don't want the policy anymore. So your life insurance ends. They send you the cash value of what that life insurance is. And then they say, okay, so the third option on that is that you keep that life insurance policy. And the benefit to it is that it will go until a certain age. Typically, it depends on the company, but typically 70, 77 is the age. And once it hits that age, then you don't pay another dime in it. So that's kind of the nice part about it. You have a life insurance policy for the end of life. So people who are elderly that only need a small policy, They've been paying on this for 20 years or 30 years. It's paid off. They've got life insurance, plus they also have a cash value that's in there. So it's kind of a nice part. They've got a dual kind of coverage. And that's where really you look at what a policy you should have as a young person and keep that as an extra investment opportunity, because when you hit 65, you can also roll those over into a retirement fund. So again, another way to help set aside money ahead of time for your retirement. And then, between the two of them, again, young person, whole life, a small policy, 20,000, 30,000. So that way when they hit the retirement, they'll have that cash. Plus also have a funeral policy they don't have to worry about. And 20 or 30,000 on a young person for a whole life is very cheap, usually about $2 to $4 per week. And then, protect yourself during the middle part of your life, have a small life insurance. People who have significant others should have both still. Whole life is still affordable up until you hit around the 40s, sometimes in the 50s, depends on the company. And then when we get to our end stage, that's when we're talking about having a policy that you only need for your funerals. If you don't already have one set up, then you can go out and purchase a life insurance policy in the elder years. You've seen them on TV where you get $1,000 for $9 per month. You be careful about those policies, because generally the way they work is, they're going to charge you $9.99 for $1,000. But if you want any more than that, it's per every $100 that they increase those rates. So, if you want $2,000, for example, it's not going to be $20. It's going to be probably $25, $30. So you really got to be careful on how those do it. And then again, when you start thinking about, okay, now I want a $10,000 policy, because Rob said, hey, funerals right now are costing $10,000. To have that at an elderly age is too much. You're paying over $100, almost $200 per month for that type of policy. So then what do? Well, you set aside a fund. Do you take that $10 that you would have spent, per paycheck or per month, and put that in a fund, and you mark that for your funeral fund. Now, financial advisors are going to tell you should have done this when you were younger, so that way you avoid having the life insurance from people like me. But individuals don't like putting in, a lot of money into an account and have it sit there and not do anything. So, again, you can take life insurance from us. That's why we have that there. So that way you can spend just a little bit of money now, and you don't have to spend so much when you're later on in your life. But really, it's, again, life stage. Everybody's different. I've had people that, earn well over $200,000 in a year. And, for those people, we don't really sell a lot of insurance, because they're self-funding a lot of their own stuff. And that, in some respects, can be wise, but in other times it can, it's a financial risk, just like anything else. But again, younger people, less money, look at your insurance through your company. Last things to kind of talk about is a couple other policies called critical illness, accident, and hospital confinement. So critical illness policies, or critical care, some of them call it that. Basically, those are the big ones for like cancer, heart attack, strokes, those kind of things. I recommend it for everybody, even if you don't, use it for 19, 20 years. You will thank yourself for having it. My wife is a very good example. Last 5 years, she's had cancer. Last 5 years, we've had medical bills. Last 5 years has equaled out to almost $36,000. And that's something that, I'm standing in front of my house. I would hate to lose my house because I didn't have $36,000. So that's where you look at having a critical care policy. And she had hers for over 19 years. And there was even a point where I had said, hey, look, honey, I don't know that we really should have this, critical care policy. I think that maybe we should drop it, because we've spent almost as much as we are going to get in premiums. And she said, no, I'm going to keep it for at least a couple more years. And I said, okay, fine. Then sure enough, next year she got cancer. So again, she didn't worry about it for 19 years. It came in handy when it came in handy. And usually if you get a cancer policy when you're a younger person, it's really cheap. Depending on the type of policy, some of them lock in the rate, which is always the greatest thing in the world, because if you're a young person and you're only paying $2 per paycheck for a locked in rate, definitely get it. Then there's also ones that go up in aggregate amounts. And basically what that does is every time your age ends in either a 5 or a 0, the rates then will increase slightly. And for a young person, you don't see any significant rate change until you hit in your mid 40s to 50s. Kind of notice a theme there? Yeah, they figured out that when you start getting older, when you get in your 40s and 50s, you're becoming a little more risky person. So they start raising rates on you. And it starts to go up significantly after 50. So again, lock in before, and then hopefully that'll stay that way. Accident policies, those are, again, it's up to each individual person. I usually look at the person and I say, hey, are you an active outdoor person? Is your job environment hazardous? If that's the accident policy covers on the job, if it does. And then I also ask, are you klutzy? I am, I'm a klutzy person. I'm surprised I didn't fall out there on the trail that I was on, but I am. Matter of fact, one of the reasons why we got it was because one year I was up putting up Christmas lights and I actually fell off the roof. Yeah. Luckily it was one story. Luckily I was young enough to where it didn't hurt me, but that's a very good example of why you have it. The company that I work with, I don't know if he's still employed or not, but at the time, I believe he's the vice president of the company. He was putting up a light in his house on a 3-foot ladder. Ladder crumpled and he fell and ended up paralyzing him. So, and luckily his accident policy was able to help pay for a lot of stuff, because a lot of those usually have a accidental death and dismemberment, and some of them include being paralyzed. So that's one of those things that you look at and you see what those policies cover. And then finally, the hospital confinement policy. This one is, it's up to everybody. Again, if you're a person that experiences a lot of sicknesses, even if it's not a major sickness, might want to think about getting that one, because what that does is it pays you a lump sum for having to go into the hospital. So it'll help cover usually your deductible, or the first $1,000 to $1,500 of your hospital bill. Another one for it is usually women who are thinking about becoming pregnant. That's also one you want to pick up. And again, you have to do it before you become pregnant, because amazing enough, they do have a little, what they call exclusion in there that says, hey, if you're already pregnant, we're not going to cover you, because, why? You should have picked it up before you were pregnant. So, that's the reason why you pick those up. Men, I usually sell a lot less to men, but again, it also depends on what you're doing for your sicknesses. If your person has diabetes, high blood pressure, might want to think about having that, because that's definitely something you're running a risk of having to go into the hospital a little more often. Now again, those policies usually have another exclusion on there. It's called a pre-existing condition exclusion, and most of them say, hey, if you have, for example, diabetes, we're not going to cover you for the very first year of the policy, but after the first year, then we'll cover you. Some of them say we won't cover you at all, but again, it depends on the company and depends on the policy. And whenever your employer says, hey, for this open enrollment, we're going to do everything guaranteed issue, so life insurance or any of those voluntary policies, always seriously think about getting them, because with those ones, when they say guaranteed issue, that means they're not going to ask you any medical questions. So if you've already had cancer, if you've already, if you've got diabetes or, this or that or whatever it might be, they will say, we're not going to worry about that. We'll still cover you. You just have to go against that pre-existing condition limitation, but we're not going to deny you coverage. And a lot of times when we're talking those voluntary policies, if they don't have that guaranteed issue, if you are diabetic, had cancer, had a stroke, had a heart attack, you're not the right height or weight, they will deny you coverage. I've even had it where people, they're taking more than 5 medicines, they've denied them coverage. So, just when those things happen, make sure you sign up for that. Okay. Wow, almost 30 minutes there. So this was a long one. So you have yourself a great day, okay? Enjoy.